Okay.
Another way of looking at it is that there is a dispute here between Shmuel and Rav Yochanan. However, Maimonides decides that he's going to bring down the law according to the Jerusalem Talmud and the writings of the sages, which were also compiled in the land of Israel. Now we have to understand, according to the Babylonian Talmud, a group of Jewish people came to Bar Kokhba and they decided to check if he would be able to supernaturally judge a case, various cases, and when they were not able to, possibly they killed him or they had him killed by the Romans. But on the other hand, according to the Jerusalem Talmud and the words of our sages, which come from the land of Israel, we see a quite opposite picture, that Rabbi Akiva believed that Bar Kokhba was the Messiah. The sages went along with him that he was the Messiah, and there was no supernatural test. It wasn't needed, and it's not a prerequisite. And as we saw, even according to some, it's even against Jewish law to have such a supernatural decision in a judicial case. So we have here, very interesting, from two commentators, they tell us that in many, many instances, when there is a dispute between the Babylonian Talmud and the Jerusalem Talmud, the Maimonides goes according to the Jerusalem Talmud and the words of our sages, which the Midrashei Chazal, which were compiled in the land of Israel. And I'm going to bring down two of them. Number one is the Ravad. Ravad, on his disputing Maimonides in the laws of Kriyat Shema, the morning prayers, he writes the following, that we see in this certain case which is connected to prayers, Kriyat Shema, prayer, we see that the Rambam, as in many instances, decided to give his law according to the opinion of the Jerusalem Talmud. The Vilna Gaon, Rabbi Eliyahu from Vilna, he tells us in the Code of Jewish Law, Orach Chaim 546, chapter that is, and Law 5, we see in that case that, here's the words of the Gra, that Maimonides, as he usually does, relies on the words of the Jerusalem Talmud and the words of the sages that were compiled in Eretz Yisrael over the work of the Babylonian Talmud. So it's very clear here that Maimonides decided to go on the line of the Talmud of Eretz Yisrael, of the land of Israel, which looked in a positive light at the dealings of the Bar Kokhba period of time. Okay, our next tackle is that there are inner contradictions between Maimonides. We brought 7 different sources, and there's sometimes Maimonides brings down that this is a miraculous period of time. Sometimes he brings down that this is a natural period of time. So once again, we don't have to get too nervous about it. Just calm down, take a seat. Pull up a glass of fresh water, and here we go. We're going to bring down now, with God's help, 3 sources that show that there is no discrepancy between Maimonides. The Messianic age is a process. And when Maimonides speaks about a natural process, he's talking about the beginning stages. When he speaks about a supernatural, wondrous period of time, miraculous time, he's talking about advanced stages. How does this play out? Much of it depends on the Jewish people, depending on our spiritual and ethical level at the time. We could perhaps speed up the process, we could perhaps skip various stages of the process, but if worse comes to worse, there is a process here, and different stages. They will begin on a low burning fire, and they will pick up as time rolls. So number 1, we have our book First source, it's called From Exile to Redemption by Rabbi Alter Friedman, page 258. Here's what he writes. He brings down various sources of Maimonides. He shows the contradiction as we did at the beginning of our class. And here's what he says. No sweat, no problem. The beginning stages of the Messiah will be a natural process. That's why Rabbi Akiva and the leading sages of their generation, they believed that Bar Kokhba was the Messiah because he was doing things that are the beginning process. What does that mean, the beginning process? He was bringing the Jewish people back to the land of Israel. He was conquering the Gentiles. He was conquering the land of Israel. The land of Israel became independent, a sovereign state for 4 years. So this is the beginning stages of the redemption and the Messianic era. Afterwards, when Maimonides brings down need for supernatural wondrous acts, this is a later stage of the game. Number 2. In the former chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Shlomo Goren, who was the chief rabbi first of the army in 1967 in the Six-Day War, he has a book, it's called The Laws of the Holidays. In 2 places, he writes the same idea. Here on pages 548 and page 549. So take it from the beginning. Rabbi Goren says the following, 548. He says we have to understand, he brings down various contradicting sources within Maimonides. You have to understand that there are different stages. At the beginning, there will be a stage of setting up first he will conquer the land of Israel. Afterwards he will establish a governing body in the land of Israel. There will be independence. Afterwards he will build the temple. Afterwards he will ingather the Jewish people. There will be a process of the ingathering of the exiles of the Jewish people for all the world. As the process goes on, there will be less need for natural means and things will become much more supernatural. So this is written in 2 places in the book of Rabbi Goren. Okay, next question is there a need for the Messiah to be from the family of King David, the lineage of King David? So we know that King David is from the tribe of Judah. However, within Judah, there are 2 offshoots of the family. Judah had 2 children, 2 sons. One was named Zerach and the other Peretz. From the Peretz lineage comes the David dynasty of Messiah, and the other from the side of the offshoot of Zerach, that's not. So question is, was Bar Kokhba, was he from that lineage? Why did they think that he was the Messiah? Did they check it out? Did somebody check out who he was? Did they give him a background check? So let's look. First source is the famous author of the commentary on the Torah, Tzror Hamor, written by Rabbi Avram Saba, who was one of the Jews that in 1492 was expelled from Spain. He has another book. It's a question and answer book called Ketz Hayamin. There, astonishingly, he said that he did research, and Bar Kokhba was from the lineage of King David. Pretty wild. Possibly the same idea, not necessarily, is from a different book, Seder HaDorot, which goes from the beginning of creation throughout Jewish history. It goes, and it writes that Bar Kokhba was from the tribe of Judah, which is a good start. However, as we said, there's 2 different tracks, and one is not, so that's not clear. Our third source is in a book, Har HaMelech. It was on page 406. An amazing idea here. He brings down the question. Somebody asked the author of Har HaMelech, was is there a need that the king, Messiah, will be from the lineage of King David? So here's what he says. It could be, on one hand, that Rabbi Akiva was not interested. He never checked it out. He was not interested. Because it doesn't matter. Even though he might not be in the lineage of the King David dynasty, he was definitely a representative of the Messiah, of the son of Joseph. As we mentioned, Joseph representing the physical buildup of the land of Israel, the material side, the economical side, the army side, the war, the military side of the land of Israel, of the return of the Jewish people. So therefore, it could be that Rabbi Akiva never even bothered to check because he saw all the signs. It was clear to Rabbi Akiva that Bar Kokhba had definite signs of being at least a Messiah on the level of the son of Joseph, who's here to restore government and sovereignty and independence to the Jewish people. And therefore, that is his answer. Okay, so we have, it was possible that Bar Kokhba was from the dynasty of King David. It's possible, it's a question mark, and it doesn't really matter because Rabbi Akiva saw him as the beginning process of the Messianic era, which is the Messiah of the son of Joseph. Okay. Now, God willing, in our next class, we will discuss a very, very important issue. I'm just going to throw it out right now, and then we'll leave you in suspense. Don't touch that dial. Rambam, Maimonides, in 3 places, he speaks about the Messiah period, or the Messiah himself. He speaks about in terms of military. He speaks about fighting wars. He speaks about victories in these wars. He speaks about independence. He speaks about bringing Jews back to Israel. Our question is, why is it? And this is fundamental. If you understand this point, you understand everything. Why is it a prelude that in order to bring upon the final redemption, there is always a need for this military battles, wars being fought, the land of Israel being resurrected, coming to life again? Why is there a need for this militaristic side? Why did Rabbi Akiva say, when he saw what Bar Kokhba was doing, when he saw that he was ruthless, when he saw that he was taking vengeance against the nations of the world, when he saw that he was being victorious in wars, when he saw what a warrior he was, he said, this is the Messiah. Why in the world, why is this a prerequisite for the period of Messiah? That's a big question. It was that way 2,000 years ago, and we see today very similar what's going on with the IDF being one of the most powerful armies in the world, definitely in the Middle East, but also in the world. Why is there a need for a military, for war, for battles, in order for us to bring on the era of the redemption where Rabbi Akiva understood this necessity? So stay tuned.